All right, so today we are going like deep, deep into 3D printing.
Ooh, exciting.
But not just the tech itself, we're talking business,
Right.
like how to make actual money with this stuff.
Yeah.
And our jumping off point is this article.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
called Eingefügter Text.
Okay.
Catchy. Right.
Yeah, I like it.
So think of this whole deep dive as like your 3D printing for profit crash course.
Right. Well, what's really interesting is we're kind of past the hype phase with 3D printing. It's not just a hobbyist toy anymore. We're
Right.
talking serious industry disruption, which, means opportunity.
Okay. Opportunity for what exactly? I mean, yeah, printing little plastic trinkets is fun,
Sure.
but is that really a business?
Let's ditch the trinket image, okay?
Mhm.
I mean, think medical devices printed on demand, hyper-customized prosthetics that fit perfectly.
Wow.
Houses being built with massive 3D printers. I mean, the market's projected to hit like $37.2 billion
Oh,
by 2026, but that number alone doesn't really tell the whole story. It's the types of businesses that are popping up
right.
that are really fascinating.
So not just what's being printed, but like who is doing the printing and for whom.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay. But before we go too far, I want to rewind just a smidge.
Sure.
So I get that 3D printing is this whole additive manufacturing thing,
Right.
right? Building stuff layer by layer.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes it so different from, say, like injection molding
Okay.
or like traditional machining?
Right.
Why is this the game changer?
So it really boils down to customization and speed.
Got it.
Imagine, like, you're a company, you need a specific part. With those traditional methods, you're talking weeks, months, lead time,
Oh, for sure.
huge minimum orders.
Yeah.
3D printing, it flips the script. Need one weird, complex part, done.
Wow.
100 variations of that part for testing, also done, and likely on the same time frame.
So it's like giving engineers and designers superpowers.
Right.
That they can just iterate rapidly, experiment without going bankrupt in the process.
Yes.
But, okay, how does that translate to me potentially starting a business?
Oh, think about it this way. 3D printing removes the barriers to entry. You don't need a factory.
Yeah.
You don't need a warehouse full of inventory.
Right.
You can start small, hyper-focused on a specific niche.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, and the article actually gives a pretty good framework for doing just that.
Okay, color me intrigued.
Right.
Walk me through this framework.
All right.
What is step one on my path to becoming, a 3D printing mogul?
Step one, niche selection.
Okay.
This is where a lot of people stumble, I think. They
Mhm.
get so excited by the tech, they forget about the market, right?
Right.
What problem are you solving?
Yeah.
Who are your ideal customers?
Okay, so I need to figure out if I'm selling custom cookie cutters to bakeries or, I don't know, prototypes to engineers, or maybe even those bespoke medical devices you mentioned. But how do I know what's actually viable? I mean, I could have a burning passion for, I don't know, 3D printed dog sweaters,
Sure.
but if nobody's buying them.
Well, passion is great. Yeah. But you need market validation, right?
Sure.
Are there businesses out there already doing something similar?
Right.
Are people asking for this product or service?
That's a good point.
And here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
The article goes into some seriously specific niches, like stuff I hadn't even considered before.
Oh, spill the beans. Give me an example.
Okay, how about 3D printing replacement parts for vintage appliances?
Oh,
Turns out there's a huge demand, people love their old gadgets,
right.
but finding parts is a nightmare. So someone with the right skills and a 3D printer could really corner that market.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Never would have thought of that. Okay, so I've got my killer niche.
All right.
What's next? I gotta gear up, obviously. But this isn't like buying a standard inkjet printer,
Not
right?
quite. I mean, you've got your FDM printers, your SLA printers,
Yeah.
even some wild new tech using like lasers and metal powders.
Whoa.
Luckily, the article breaks down the pros and cons of popular models, and I think
got
we should definitely dig into that.
Oh, absolutely. But hold on, before we geek out on printer specs, there's something else I've been wondering about.
Yeah.
Space. Like, I'm picturing these giant industrial robots, molten plastic flying everywhere.
Sure.
Can I really run a 3D printing business out of, say, my garage?
You'd be surprised. I mean, some of the most successful 3D printing businesses started small.
Oh,
A clean, well-ventilated space is key, obviously, for safety and print quality. But here's a thought. What if your space wasn't even yours to begin with?
Okay, you've officially lost me. What do you mean?
Think maker spaces, right? Co-working spaces,
Okay.
specifically geared towards 3D printing.
Right, right.
You get access to top-of-the-line equipment, maybe even some mentorship,
Oh, nice.
without the upfront cost of outfitting your own workshop.
That's a smart way to test the waters without, breaking the bank.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm feeling pumped. I
Yeah.
got my niche.
Okay.
I found a space.
Mhm.
But what about the actual skills? I'm not exactly a CAD whiz, And do I need an engineering degree to do this?
Not at all. Remember what we said about 3D printing removing barriers?
Yeah.
That applies to skill sets too. Tons of free and paid resources online, courses, tutorials, even communities.
Oh, cool.
Where you can learn from seasoned pros.
So even if I'm starting from scratch, I can get up to speed.
Absolutely.
That's encouraging. But let's say I've mastered the basics. I can actually print stuff.
Okay.
How do I turn that into cold, hard cash?
Right.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's where this article really shines.
Okay.
It outlines all these different business models, each with their pros and cons. And trust me, some of them are pretty ingenious.
All right, you've successfully piqued my curiosity. Let's
Yeah.
dive into these business models and see how much money we're really talking about.
Let's do it. We'll start with the most common one, taking custom orders.
All right, custom orders. Sounds pretty straightforward, but I bet there's more to it than meets the eye. So custom orders, what are we talking about here?
It's all about tapping into that demand for unique, personalized items.
Okay.
People want things made just for them.
Right.
Whether it's a wedding cake topper with their names on it or a replacement part for like a vintage radio that
Yeah.
you can't find anywhere else.
Okay, so I become a 3D printing genie, granting people's wishes one custom creation at a time.
That's a good way to put it.
I like it, but how do I actually find these customers? Are we
Yeah.
talking like setting up shop at a craft fair or something?
Think bigger, broader online
Uh,
platforms, Etsy,
Yeah.
Amazon Handmade, even specialized 3D printing marketplaces.
Okay.
That's where people go when they're looking for something truly unique.
Right.
And don't underestimate good old-fashioned networking. Local businesses, hobbyist groups, even schools might be looking for custom 3D printing solutions.
Makes sense. Okay, so I've got my online shop set up. I'm handing out business cards at the local robotics club.
Sure.
How do I actually price these custom creations?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like there's a sticker price on a one-of-a-kind 3D printed lamp.
Right. True. It's not as simple as scanning a barcode at the grocery store.
Right.
You need to factor in your material costs, the time it takes to design and print the item,
Yeah.
and of course your profit margin. The article gives a ballpark range of like $50 to $500 per item,
Wow.
but that's really just a starting point.
Yeah, I can see how pricing could get kind of tricky, especially if you're dealing with a really complex design. Like, what if a customer comes to me with a 3D model that's going to take hours to print? Do I charge by the hour, or is it more about like the perceived value of the final product?
That's a great question, and it highlights, I think, the need to have really clear pricing policies in place
Right.
from the get-go. Some businesses charge a flat design fee plus an hourly rate for printing.
Okay.
Others prefer to give customers a project-based quote
Right.
up front.
Got it.
Really depends on your target market and the types of products you're creating.
Okay, so custom orders are all about tapping into that desire for personalization. But what if I want to create my own line of products?
Yeah.
Maybe something that solves a common problem or just looks really cool. Is that a viable business model?
Absolutely. In
Yeah.
fact, it's a great way to scale your business and potentially generate recurring revenue, right? Instead of waiting for customers to come to you with custom requests,
Right.
you're proactively identifying market needs and creating products to fill those gaps.
So I'm thinking, less bespoke wedding cake topper and more like ingenious kitchen gadget that everyone needs.
Exactly.
But how do I get those products in front of potential customers? It's not like I can just walk into a department store and be like, hey, stock my shelves.
Well, you could try that,
Yeah, true.
but you'd probably get escorted out.
Right.
Online marketplaces like Etsy, Amazon Handmade,
Yeah.
even your own website
Yeah.
are perfect for selling pre-designed 3D printed products.
Mm-hmm.
You can showcase high-quality photos, write compelling descriptions,
Right.
and reach a global audience.
That's the beauty of the internet, right? No geographical limitations.
Exactly.
But I imagine there's a lot of competition out there. How do I make my products stand out in a sea of 3D printed goodies?
That's where your niche selection comes back into play.
Right.
Remember, we talked about finding a specific problem to solve.
Mm-hmm.
If your products offer a unique solution, a clever design, or maybe they're even made with sustainable materials, you're already a step ahead. And don't forget about the power of branding, A catchy name, a memorable logo, consistent messaging
Right.
that can all make a difference.
So it's all about differentiation.
Yeah.
Finding that special something that sets you apart. Okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this.
Good.
But let's say I'm not necessarily interested in selling directly to consumers, What if we want to work with businesses? Maybe even become like a silent partner in their success.
You're thinking B2B partnerships. This is where you leverage your 3D printing expertise to help businesses streamline their operations, create innovative products, maybe even bring their wildest ideas to life.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me an example of how this could work in the real world.
All right, so let's say there's a local furniture company.
Right.
They're struggling to create prototypes for a new chair design. They could spend weeks, months using traditional methods, or they could partner with you
Okay.
to 3D print those prototypes in a fraction of the time.
That's a classic example of how 3D printing can just disrupt an industry.
Exactly.
But what's in it for me, the 3D printing entrepreneur? Am I just churning out prototypes for a measly hourly rate?
Not necessarily. You could negotiate a licensing agreement where you receive royalties for every chair the company sells.
Nice.
Or you could become a white label manufacturer.
Oh, hold on. White label manufacturing, that sounds intriguing, but I need a bit more explanation. What does that entail exactly?
It's like being the ghostwriter of the manufacturing world, right?
Yeah.
You're creating the product, but another company puts their name on it
Right.
and sells it as their own.
So it's like behind the scenes.
Exactly. Behind-the-scenes partnership
Okay.
allows you to focus on what you do best, the 3D printing,
Right.
without having to worry about building a brand or marketing the product yourself.
So I could be 3D printing everything from furniture components to medical devices.
Yeah.
And nobody would even know it was me.
Exactly. It's a great way to scale your business and potentially tap into larger markets
Right.
without the overhead of building your own brand.
Okay, I'm seeing the appeal of B2B partnerships, but it seems like you need a pretty solid network and a strong understanding of different industries to make this model work.
You're right. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
But if you enjoy problem solving, collaborating with others,
Right.
and seeing your creations make a real impact,
Yep.
B2B partnerships could be a really rewarding path.
Okay, so we've talked about custom orders, creating our own product line, and partnering with businesses. Are there any other ways to monetize my newfound 3D printing superpowers?
There is one more model we haven't talked about yet, sharing your expertise through workshops and training sessions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
So instead of just printing objects, I'm printing knowledge.
exactly.
I like it. But is there really a market for that? I mean, with all the free information available online, would people actually pay for 3D printing lessons?
Absolutely. Think about it. Online resources are great for getting started,
Sure.
but sometimes you need that hands-on guidance
Right.
from an experienced instructor.
Right.
People are willing to invest in workshops that offer personalized attention, practical tips,
Yeah.
and the chance to learn from someone who's already walked the 3D printing path.
You're right. There's nothing quite like learning from a real person,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to a technical skill like 3D printing. What kind of workshops could I offer? I'm imagining everything from like beginner-friendly introductions to 3D modeling to, advanced courses on specific printing techniques.
Yeah, you got the right idea. You could tailor your workshops to different skill levels, interests, maybe even partner with local schools, libraries, community centers to reach a wider audience.
Okay. Yeah.
And here's an interesting thought. What if you combined your 3D printing expertise with another passion,
Okay.
like jewelry making or miniature painting?
Ooh, now you're talking. I could teach people how to design and print their own custom jewelry or create incredibly detailed miniature figures for tabletop gaming.
Exactly.
That's a brilliant way to combine multiple interests and create a really unique workshop experience.
It is. And think about the possibilities for online courses. You could reach a global audience and create a passive income stream by sharing your knowledge through, pre-recorded videos, downloadable resources.
Okay, I am officially blown away by the sheer variety of business models available to 3D printing entrepreneurs.
It's pretty amazing.
It seems like the only limit is your imagination.
It really is.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Right.
Before you start printing dollar bills, there are a few important challenges to consider.
Yeah, we can't ignore those.
Every entrepreneurial journey has its, bumps in the road.
Of course.
What are some of the not so fun aspects of running a 3D printing business?
Okay.
Where could things potentially go wrong?
Well, one challenge that often trips people up is the initial investment.
Okay.
3D printers aren't exactly cheap,
Yeah.
especially if you're, aiming for that professional grade equipment.
Right.
And then there's the cost of materials, software, setting up your workspace.
Yeah, it's not like you can just grab a $50 printer off the shelf and start churning out masterpieces.
Yeah.
But is there a way to mitigate those startup costs? I mean, not everyone has, a venture capitalist on speed dial.
Absolutely. And thankfully, there are ways to start small and scale up gradually.
Okay.
Remember we talked about maker spaces?
Yeah.
That's one option, right? You
Yeah.
get access to high-end equipment without that hefty upfront investment.
Right. Yeah.
You could also consider starting with a more, I guess, affordable entry-level printer
Mm-hmm.
and then reinvest your profits as your business grows.
That makes sense, yeah. Starting lean, bootstrapping your way up.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say I've overcome the financial hurdle. What other challenges should I be prepared for?
Well, the learning curve can be pretty steep,
Okay.
especially if you're coming into this with no prior experience in, like
Hmm.
3D modeling or printing.
Right.
There's a lot of technical knowledge involved.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes time and dedication to master the nuances of different software, materials, printing techniques.
It sounds like a lot to wrap your head around, but didn't you mention that there are, tons of resources available online? Surely those can help flatten the learning curve a bit?
They absolutely can. There's a wealth of information out there. Free tutorials, online courses, even vibrant online communities
Oh, cool.
where you can connect with, experienced makers, get your questions answered.
Oh, that's nice.
Don't be afraid to experiment, make mistakes, learn from those experiences. That's often the best way to solidify your knowledge.
It's encouraging to know that there's such a supportive community out there.
It is.
Okay, what about competition? I imagine the 3D printing market is getting pretty crowded these days.
Sure.
How do you stand out from the crowd and attract customers?
That's a valid concern. The key is differentiation, right? Finding that unique angle that sets you apart from the rest could be your niche specialization, your commitment to sustainable materials,
Mm-hmm.
your lightning fast turnaround times, or maybe even your quirky personality that shines through in your branding.
So it's not just about the technical skills.
Right.
It's about finding your unique voice
Exactly.
and showcasing what makes your business special. I like that.
Yeah.
Are there any other potential pitfalls we haven't discussed yet?
One thing to keep in mind is that 3D printing technology, it's constantly evolving.
Right.
What's cutting edge today might be outdated tomorrow.
Okay.
Right. New materials, software, printing techniques are emerging all the time.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of business.
Yeah.
You need to stay on top of the latest trends
Yeah.
and constantly be, learning and adapting.
Exactly.
Sounds like a challenge, but also kind of exciting.
It is. I mean, embracing that constant evolution is part of what makes this industry so dynamic and rewarding.
Right.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one developing the next groundbreaking 3D printing innovation.
Okay, I'm officially inspired. But before we wrap up,
Right.
let's recap the key takeaways for our listeners who might be, inching to start their own 3D printing ventures.
Mm.
What are the essential things to keep in mind?
Okay, well, first and foremost,
Well.
focus on finding a niche that genuinely excites you.
Yeah.
And has real market potential. Do your research, validate your ideas, and make sure there's a demand for what you're offering.
Right. Don't just jump on the 3D printing bandwagon because it, sounds cool.
Yeah.
Have a clear vision and a solid business plan.
Exactly.
What else?
Don't be afraid to start small and scale up gradually.
Yeah.
You don't need the most expensive equipment or a fancy studio right out of the gate.
Right.
Get creative, utilize resources like makerspaces,
Mm-hmm.
reinvest your profits wisely.
Makes sense. It's all about, taking those first steps and building that momentum.
Yeah.
What about the learning curve? Any advice for aspiring 3D printing entrepreneurs who might be feeling a little intimidated by the technical aspects?
Embrace the learning process.
Okay.
There are so many amazing resources available. We talked about online tutorials, courses, communities, even hands-on workshops. Don't be afraid to ask questions, experiment, and learn from your mistakes.
It's like you said earlier that continuous learning is part of what makes this field so rewarding.
It really is.
Okay. Any final words of wisdom before we bid farewell to our listeners?
If you're passionate about creativity, innovation, and the power of technology to bring ideas to life, 3D printing might just be the perfect entrepreneurial path for you.
Yeah.
Take the plunge, explore the possibilities, and who knows, you might just surprise yourself with what you can achieve.
That's a fantastic note to end on. So to all our listeners out there,
Yeah.
if you're feeling that spark of inspiration, don't let it fizzle out.
Yeah.
Dive into the world of 3D printing
Hmm.
and see where your imagination takes you. Until next time, happy printing.